Call the meeting to order.
Sean Lucas,
Here.
Justin Orff,
Here.
Jared Giddens,
Here.
Aaron Peterson,
Here.
Darlene Graham,
Here.
Amy Hoekstra.
Here.
Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Coffey handled her first duties as our new city clerk very well, doing the roll call. Very good job. We'll move on to our proclamation section. This meeting's proclamation is Ronald McDonald House Week. And I remember my glasses. Whereas Springfield's two Ronald McDonald House programs have provided a home away from home and an invaluable source of hope and comfort for families of seriously ill and injured children who must travel far from home for medical treatment. And whereas the two Ronald McDonald houses located in Springfield, Missouri allow their guests to maintain close contact with their seriously ill children to provide a secure and supportive environment at no required cost. And whereas the Ronald McDonald House near Cox South and the house I think it's the house, spelling, at Mercy Kids have served the needs of 447 Christian County families, 109 of which are residents of Nixa. And whereas on Tuesday, January 25th, 2020, 69 McDonald's restaurants and various other locations will be showing their support by asking customers to share the heart by adopting a $1, $5, and $20 to Ronald McDonald House Charities of the Ozarks through the Share a Heart campaign. Whereas the following generous contributions have provided sponsorship funding and underwritten the costs for the Share a Heart campaign: McDonald's of the Ozarks, Great Southern Bank, Mid-Am, Metal Forming, and KY3 Television. And whereas McDonald's of Nixa is a participant in the Share a Heart campaign, which will continue through February 28th, 2022. Now, therefore, I, Brian Steele, Mayor for the City of Nixa, do hereby proclaim February 14th through the 20th, 2020 as Ronald McDonald House Week.
2022.
A very worthwhile charity. We will move on to our visitor section. Ms. Coffey.
Ron Sanders,
Good evening. My name is Ron Sanders. I live at 976 Glen Oaks Drive. Congratulations. Congratulations. Awesome stuff. I'd like to talk a little bit about as cities grow, the people who run the cities become a little bit more distant from the voters, from the constituents, from the citizens. And a couple things that I've noticed over the past year or so is that we are starting to grow, and we're starting to grow apart. And in speaking to a lot of people throughout the city, there are a bunch of people who are worried that we're losing our small town feel. And then there are other people that are worried that we're growing too fast. One of the indicators of this growth is how much bureaucracy starts to creep into our city. And I've noticed it with the speed limits. The speed limits no longer have to come in front of the city council. They're going to be handled by an engineer, so there's no oversight by the city council. Something that passed a little while back about a nuisance ordinance, where the police can get a warrant to search your backyard or something like that because of a reported nuisance. And, that's a little bit troubling. And now tonight on the docket, we have a very concerning part of what seems to be a really good energy, electric deal, where we're lowering the prices of electricity for the next 5 years. But in there is a little energy cost adjustment. And that energy cost adjustment moves the price away from the city council's purview and away from the people. And from what I can see is that yearly, the energy prices can be adjusted up or down, of course, Haven't seen too many energy prices go down, but this is a great thing that we're going to see it go down over the next 5 years if the energy costs stay reasonable. But that energy cost adjustment can, pretty much wipe all those savings out for the following year. My concern, and what I'm talking about right now, is that the city council is here for all of those big bill issues. And whenever the people don't have this podium to come to for those big bill issues, then that's just a signal that a bureaucracy is being created to hide all of those things from the voting people and from the purview of the voted, the people voted in to the city council or into the government. My concern there is that as we grow, the city council will continue to remove those issues into a bureaucracy that would otherwise cause the voters to either vote for them or not vote for them. And it kind of takes the pressure off of you as the elected officials and hides it back inside of a bureaucracy where people can't see it, where people can't get to it. One of the big examples in our community is our school. Our school, the people who run our schools are hidden behind a huge layer of bureaucracy. You have to go see a counselor, then you go see another person, then you go see another person before you can actually talk to the person in charge if they want to talk to you. If you want to go talk to the Nixa school board, you have to get on the agenda, and if they want to put your subject on the agenda, then they'll let you talk. I really love the fact that we still have the free speech right here for at least 5 minutes. Okay, but as that bureaucracy gets bigger and as the city grows, and if the city council and the leadership have a bureaucratic mind to create this big government thought process, then we're going to see this dwindle. We're going to see the time dwindle down to 2 minutes like it is over at the school. And we're going to see the elected officials fade into a way higher up podium where the citizens won't be able to reach them, won't be able to talk to them, won't be able to, put pressure on them when there's something wrong. And that really concerns me because most of the people here want that small town feel, even though we're growing. And I think that one of the ways that we can keep that small town feel is to make sure that the city council, the people who are charged with running our city, have a little bit of responsibility for all the big ticket issues that make our city what it is and have to answer to it periodically. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. I think wouldn't find our council distant. I think we're probably 7 of the most involved people in the community in one way or another, or in lots of different ways, which is really the best thing about it. As far as bureaucracy, I definitely understand that, and that's definitely a valid point. I think it's becomes a question of what we find those high-value targets for the city council to be in charge of reviewing. So if something like the speed limits, we made a decision that the speed limits were better defined by experts in that field instead of that person going through all that process. Same thing, in a little bit we'll have a resolution about a special use permit that we'll discuss why does that have to come to city council? That's something that doesn't seem like maybe it's a business process and we're just slowing down that person's business from coming into town. So those are types of things that we definitely try to look at. The electric rate, we can talk about that when we get to that item. I think maybe just have some misunderstanding about how that is. I think it's actually bringing the control closer to us because it's bringing it back to Nixa, back to this council, and away from city utilities in Springfield. So I think that's definitely a benefit for us. So, anybody else?
Not at this time.
We'll leave the visitor section open if anyone else would like to speak. And we'll close visitor section. Move on to first reading, 2022-021.
Council Bill Number 2022-021, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa annexing approximately 5 acres of real property generally located at 617 South Harrison Street, zoning said property to R5 zoning district, and amending Chapter 2, Article 2 of the Nixa City Code.
Good evening. This bill would annex 5 acres located at 617 South Harrison Street into the corporate city limits of Nixa, and at the same time, it would zone this property within the city's R5 medium-density multifamily zoning district. The site, as I mentioned, is 5 acres. Its existing land use is nothing. It's just vacant land, has some brush and trees on it. So it's compact and contiguous to our current city limits, which makes it legally eligible for this annexation. It does not have immediate access to any of the 3 municipal utilities. And by immediate access, I mean that those utilities are touching the property at some point. However, those municipal utilities are nearby, they are in close proximity, and when I say they are available to the property for development, I mean that they are near enough that staff does not consider it to be an unreasonable distance for extension, and that they are of sufficient capacity to serve this 5 acres with the zoning that has been requested. This map here shows the location of the subject 5 acres there at the termination of South Harrison Street. So South Harrison Street is a public street of local class inside the city of Nixa, and then it leaves the city limits at that point. And so based on what staff has seen, there is not a record that there is any public right-of-way that continues outside of the city limits. Obviously, if it does, it's not city right-of-way. So a question arose of there's somebody who currently enjoys access to their home through a corridor there across the side. Whatever easements or other legal arrangements exist, the annexation of this property would not affect those. So whoever has easement for access or any other purpose would continue to have that easement. The annexation and the zoning would not affect that. One of the questions that staff has explored is whether the extension of South Harrison Street would be necessary for the development of this site if it were brought into the city. It's a question that the prospective developer has asked. So staff has given some initial guidance about this, that the extension of South Harrison Street would not be necessary under the conditions. So this is a map that kind of shows what that street extension would need to be like if it were to be constructed. You'll see that there's a sinkhole that straddles the property line between this 5 acres and the property line to the west. Any public street extension through there would have to avoid that sinkhole, which would make the construction of that street more expensive. And then furthermore, that particular extension of public street would not only add initial cost to the development, but then in continued maintenance costs to the city. And so from a cost benefit standpoint, staff's recommendation is that it's not really worth it. This connection is redundant to an existing connection that you get from South Street here. So Trail Point already has a public street connection, so Harrison Street is redundant, and furthermore, it doesn't provide any additional access to any properties nearby. They all already enjoy public street access here. This property enjoys access to Harrison Street here and also to Patricia here. So this basically becomes a public thoroughfare that, if required to be constructed, would add additional expense, but the benefits you would derive from that expense would not, in our view, outweigh those costs. So staff's recommendation is that South Harrison Street would not need to be extended as a public street. They could just pull private access off of the termination of that street and then develop accordingly to provide emergency vehicle turnaround, et cetera. Concerning the zoning district that's being requested, the R5 zoning district allows for residential dwelling units to be constructed that are attached at a maximum density of 8.71 dwelling units per acre. So just for a sense of comparison, the city's single-family zoning district allows for 6.6 dwelling units per acre. The R3 multifamily, which is the higher density multifamily zoning district, allows for up to 14.52 dwelling units per acre. So it's a relatively moderate density of dwelling units. And another thing that is particular to the R5 district that I think is important is every dwelling unit that's constructed has to have its own separate ground floor entrance. Okay, so that doesn't mean that they can't be multi-stories, but every unit has a ground floor entrance, so you wouldn't have units above that had their own separate entrance, so you could not have the traditional multi-story apartment style of construction. Every unit has to have its own ground floor entrance in the R5 zoning district. This exhibit here shows the location of required screens because it adjoins the R1 single-family district to the north, to the east, and to the south. An opaque screen would be required along all of those boundaries. There's some examples of what an opaque screen might look like. And this subject property would be added to the city's Council District 3. So this is a new thing that we'll begin doing since our most recent redistricting is upon annexation, we will declare which district the annexed property will be put into, something we weren't doing before. This will make things simpler the next time we have to do redistricting. In this case, there's no question, it's completely surrounded by District 3, so it will be joining District 3. Staff recommendation for the annexation and zoning is for approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on this and voted unanimously to recommend its approval as well.
Did the owner of this property give us any idea what he plans to do with it when it's annexed in?
Development with the R5 residential density.
But he doesn't have a subdivision planned out yet, just,
They did show staff a concept drawing. We typically don't show those at this particular stage because it can create confusion because they're not bound to that concept, but they did show us a concept that would have conformed to the R5 district.
okay, thank you.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. We will open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item.
I have a couple quick questions. Whenever and this has to do with districting and all that kind of stuff, we can find all the different zones and everything on the integrity, county integrity map. You can pull it up, everybody can go in there and see it. Can you enlighten us to the process of how that's updated or how quickly that would be updated?
So how does the county assessor data get updated from us?
So depending on the outcome of council's decision here, we would update that data in our local GIS and then send a copy of that shapefile to the county assessor's office, and then they are the ones who update through integrity. I don't know what happens in that process after we send it to the county or the speed with which that happens. They may have to send it to integrity and there may be some bureaucracy involved, but I imagine it happens relatively quickly.
Okay,
Since this has been brought up though, I think we are now getting very close to actually having our own city online mapping here at Nixa. So you would actually be able to find that information through the city and no longer have to rely on the county to have a web viewer of that information.
And that would include zoning and then the districts and all that stuff for voting
Our
and everything?
internal site's a lot more in depth. It has, every water meter, every power meter, every line of phone cable, or everything in the entire city.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. And we'll leave the public hearing open. Close public hearing. Any further questions or discussion?
So Darlene and Justin, just to give you a heads up, the property owner to the south of that, and that who was here, they were at the P&Z meeting, and their only concern, just so if you guys get phone calls, their only concern is that flood's really bad now. So there's sometimes if it rains a lot, they have to wait to leave their house. But honestly, the way that looks, and obviously there's no way of making promises at this point, but I think this could probably help alleviate some of that flooding issues for them. So, but just to give you a heads up, if you get a call, they did speak at the P&Z meeting. I don't know if they'll be at our next meeting or not, but they're nice people too.
All right, move on to the next one, 2022-022.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2022-022, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa granting special use permit 22-001 to authorize a bar with restaurant used for the neighborhood commercial zone property located at 105 West Sherman Way, Suite 101.
For the benefit of those council members who've not yet seen a special use permit, because they only occur infrequently, the essence of what we're doing here is, in the city's zoning scheme, you have a variety of land uses that are permitted within certain zoning districts, and if they're not permitted, then you can't have those land uses in that district. But there's another category of permitted use that's called a special use, or in some other cities, sometimes referred to as conditional uses. And what the scheme is getting at there is basically the council has made a decision that this particular land use is okay in this particular zoning district, but only under these certain conditions. Okay, so in order for the city to validate that those conditions exist, there's a variety of public hearings that are held, and ultimately the council votes to validate that, yes, those conditions do exist, and we're going to issue this special use permit. In this particular case, what those conditions are is not abundantly clear or very specific in the city's zoning code. Staff has reviewed this, and all things being considered, I believe what the code is getting at here is this particular site, 105 West Sherman Way, is located in the neighborhood commercial district. You can have a bar with restaurant land use, and what that land use means is basically that you have a bar, you have food sales, so you have alcohol sales with food sales, and the alcohol sales is predominant to the food sales rather than the other way around, okay? So that land use is permitted in the neighborhood commercial zoning district, but only as a special use permit or under certain conditions. Again, it's not really clear what those conditions are, but when you read the zoning code in its entirety, you get a sense that because neighborhood commercial zoning districts are supposed to be something that is a little bit more friendly to a residential neighborhood environment, that you may have a neighborhood commercial district that is completely surrounded by single-family homes, for instance. And that may not be the scenario in which you would want to have this particular land use. And so what I think the code is getting at here is that this particular special use should be permitted where the neighborhood commercial zone is located in a more cohesive or coherent business district or commercial district, which staff believes is the case here. It is located within a commercial shopping center that is surrounded by other more intensive commercial land uses. It has frontage on what is regionally considered to be a collector, but I think from a functional local perspective, Main Street is kind of a arterial as a functioning street as well. So staff believes the location is appropriate for this type of special use permit. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing and also voted unanimously to recommend its approval.
Any questions? My previous statement that this is something we want to look at changing so that a special use permit would not be required for this, so that it would just be something that would be to speed up the process for the business owners if they want to do that.
A very interesting question.
Or make the rules more specific so that you would have better guidance on what to go on.
Yes, I definitely would recommend that. Whether you would want to make this no longer special use, my only advice to the council would be that I would think hopefully over time as development patterns change, that you may actually have some neighborhood commercial development within residential areas, and that may be something the council wants to reserve for only special circumstances. There may be some things where, like I said, in a business district it's fine, but in the middle of a neighborhood maybe not. And if this is one of those land uses that council feels that way about, then I would leave it alone. But certainly to make the conditions more specific, I think that would be very helpful.
So do we have to have a special, would you have to have a special use permit if this was whatever the zoning district is on Highway 14 or 160?
No, general commercial and highway commercial, this would be permitted by right. No special use permit necessary.
Probably we need to update it because all that stuff, everything on Main Street should probably be, especially as we widen it and expand it all the way up, everything should probably be the other zoning, right?
So this particular location, 105 West Sherman Way, I think, in my view, could easily be general commercial. rather than neighborhood commercial, in which case the special use permit would not have been necessary.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. And we'll open the public hearing, if anyone would like to speak to this. And we will close the public hearing. Any further questions or comments? Nope. Thank you very much. All right, move on to 2022-023.
First reading, Council Bill 2022-023, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa granting special use permit 22-002 to authorize a short-term residential rental use for a single-family zone property located at 605 South Bradford Avenue.
So similar situation to what I just described. It's a land use that is in many important ways commercial, but also happens most frequently within a single-family home. And so the city had made a decision several years ago that this could be permitted in the single-family or in other residential zoning districts, but only upon the issuance of a special use permit. This particular applicant has provided all the documents necessary to demonstrate that this would satisfy the conditions that are listed for short-term residential rentals. In this case, those conditions are a little bit more specific and helpful. It can't be within 150 feet of another short-term rental. The person has to be a quote-unquote permanent resident, which the code validates as being somebody who can provide 2 of a certain list of 5 types of documents that are intended to demonstrate that the person lives there and actually resides in the home. And whether it does that effectively, I think, is a separate question. But this particular applicant has provided all of that information. Staff is recommending the approval. I apologize, let me show you the location. 605 South Bradford Way is completely surrounded by conventional single-family zoning and development. Staff is recommending the approval of this special use permit. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing a week ago on this matter and voted unanimously to recommend its approval as well.
Any questions? Would like at some point go back and look at some of the holes, what documents are required. Seems like maybe that list is not quite as stringent as it could have been. Also kind of the gap between what is a long-term rental and what is like a long-term rental we're considering a year based pretty much off for the purposes of doing the rental inspection. But this we're only doing a month, so there's this gap of places in between that are 1 month rental or a 6 month rental or something else that don't fall into either one of those 2 categories, right?
Right. Yeah, there's kind of a medium-term rental there that doesn't get well regulated. I agree.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll open up the public hearing.
A couple quick questions. First of all, would this be in a HOA? Would this be in an HOA area? Do they have one established?
I'm not sure, do you know, Garrett, if they have a?
I don't know the answer to that. My
I don't think
predecessor
there's one
might.
over there.
Do you know if there's an established HOA in this neighborhood, Travis?
Okay, second question, would this be like considered like a long-term Airbnb? Is that what the structure would be, or is this just we're gonna furnish it and we're gonna let people move in for a month at a time and, until their house is built or something like that?
So
I
what
think
they're
the
applying
neighbor-
for is to be a short-term rental, which is less than a month at a time.
So it could be an Airbnb or a VRBO,
Mhm.
Verbo?
That's normally what
Something
these are
like that.
becoming, yep.
Okay, thanks.
And we'll leave the public hearing open. And close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? All right, we'll move on to 2022-024. I think, right?
First reading, Council Bill number 2022-024, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the 2022 annual budget to appropriate funds for the purchase of a floor burnisher for the Parks Department.
Good evening.
Get a mop, Matt, get a mop.
Well, we can do a mop,
Yeah.
but the floor burnisher makes it look a lot nicer. And so, yes, we were asking for a budget amendment. During our 2022 budget process, we identified the floor furniture as something that we needed to replace, as it's just old, and not doing that great of a job. Somehow inadvertently, it got left out of our budget, and so I'm asking for that budget amendment in the amount of $7,500 to purchase a new one. In that time, since we prepared the budget, it has completely died, and so it is no longer usable. We can't get the parts for it. It is a 2002 model, so it's about 20 years old, or just shy of 20 years old. So it's had a nice long life, but can't be pushed any further than what it's at this moment.
Any questions? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
And we'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any questions or discussion? All right. Yeah, he's a 2002 model too, right? Yeah. 2022-025.
First reading Council Bill Number 2022-025, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the mayor to execute an asset purchase agreement with Rex Steffenderfer Enterprises Incorporated for the acquisition of certain water system.
Good evening. If you don't mind, when I speak about this presentation, I'm really gonna be talking about 025 and 026. We have separate ordinances for the two different systems that we're talking about potential purchase. So, as we discussed, we had a presentation about this at your October 25th meeting, and we introduced the possible acquisition of the RDE Water Company and the Tuscany Hills Water and Sewer Systems. At that time, we'd completed a considerable amount of due diligence. We've done even a little more since then. We've identified the service territories and system schematics, all of the values or appropriate values for the purchase prices, the revenue potential, operations and investments that we would need to do, as well as the benefits to the city, because the purchase of these would also enhance city services and provide a cost savings to us or for both this system and the other systems when combined, and then provided some initial estimates for operations and maintenance cost and revenue to assure that the systems would be self-sufficient in a reasonable amount of time upon the purchase. The attached ordinances, of course, would authorize the asset purchase agreements, and as I mentioned at that time, an asset purchase agreement is very similar to a contract for sale of a home. It lays out all of the items that need to take place before a closing can happen. And in the case of purchasing a utility, that's a pretty long list of items that need to take place. So, sorry, I need to switch my sheet here. I've got too many items this evening, so I'm going to have to paraphrase some of my information. The asset purchase agreement for the RDE Water Company for the cost of $2.5 million. That purchase price includes 2 utility capacity wells with a total current production capacity of 870 gallons per minute. It's my understanding that with some work over time, we would probably be able to get even more out of that, but that's certainly nothing to sneeze at. We've got a well or two that are probably under that amount. So, one 250,000 gallon ground storage tank with booster pumps that we would eventually replace with a tower, and that's the portion where we've talked about how that would enhance our northern portion of our system. We have some capital improvement projects out there to make improvements to the north end, and this location well would lend to that and could potentially save us $1 million or so. So that would be very good. It also has a 47,000 gallon standpipe tower and a well located on another piece of property. It's a smaller lot over to the western part of the system. Approximately 28.5 miles of 2-inch through 10-inch PVC mains. It's got 72 fire hydrants. This particular system has 1,072 residential customers. 66 commercial, and then customers, and then it also has a 4-inch master meter, which is an old, you used to see this a lot many, many years ago, but you don't see it very much anymore, where you've got an area where a lot of residential or commercial locations are served, but they're served through one single meter, and somebody pays a master meter, similar to the way an apartment would work in a lot of cases. The asset purchase agreement for the Tuscany Hills, which is, other than the price and the items we're buying, is an identical asset purchase agreement to the one for RDE. It lays out all of those all that same information, and it is at the purchase price of $500,000, and it includes a utility capacity well and a 60,000-gallon standpipe on a nice lot in that subdivision, a little over 10,000 square feet. Of course, it's got 6-inch, 8-inch water mains. There's 87 residential customers and 3 commercial customers. Now, the sewer system also serves, in addition to those, also serves a church. It has a sand filtration treatment facility, and it's on a fairly large area. It's a little over an acre. The Tuscany Hills system is very new. When I say new, meaning very new compared to typical utilities. Most of it's less than 15 or 20 years old, so it's in very new condition. Based on staff's assessment, both of the RDE Water and Tuscany Hills systems, obviously, as I mentioned, provide a benefit to the city. The well and property assets allow for us to make planned improvements to our existing system at a lesser cost in a shorter time frame. And it will enhance both systems at the same time as we incorporate them together. The systems have the ability to be expanded, of course, to other areas. It also provides opportunity for us to have water service and sewer service at the future work at the Oak Park, that park property, as well as economic development benefits that could be out there in the future that we don't have today on the north part of the community. Following final execution of an asset purchase agreement, in this case, of course, staff and legal counsel, we would continue to move forward. We would first seek regulatory approval. One of the systems, one of the systems is regulated by the Missouri Public Service Commission. We have had some initial discussions with them, so that's very favorable. We also have had discussions with the Department of Natural Resources and how those permits would work. There again, initial discussions with them has been very positive. Both of those agencies they like to see smaller systems consolidated with larger systems. I'm sure it makes things easier for them. And not only that, but they're not overseeing rates for something here way off in Jeff City where you would be overseeing them if they were owned by us. It's, you're right here, and so you would be overseeing rates, system management operations, and those types of things. So we would move on to that, and we would also move into, we would be coming to you with, of course, some budget amendments. We did talk about this at the CIPs in the budget, but those budget amendments haven't been made yet. We'll need to take care of those. We'll also have there was one other item. I'm sorry. I've lost my place.
The ordinance to make it legal, since it'd be totally illegal at this point in time for us to serve those people?
Yeah, well, it would be. But there will be a number of documents, obviously, that will need to be signed, and we'll have to come back to you for certain actions. Like I mentioned, budget amendments, we'll actually have some purchases that we'll need to make. We'll be the other item was the financing. We're looking to finance, a portion of this, $3 million of this with bonds. The budget amendments, of course, would take place for both expenses and the revenue side. And I'm not sure how many different things we would bring to you for the bonds. I haven't been through that process in so long, and I don't believe I've ever been through it here. So It's been quite a while. We try to pay off debt, not take on new, so it's kind of a new concept for me. It's been a long time, so. We do recommend approval of both of these. As we've mentioned, we see a great benefit for the community, both in our systems and for the service for those customers that are there now. And the purchase price, obviously, we've shown that it's a very good purchase price for both of them, and they can be self-sustaining and not be a burden on our existing customers. So I think that's a big plus.
Any questions? Oh, I got a whole list of questions. So, what's the timeline before these customers will be switched over to us?
Well, there's two different ways. One, in both cases, the closing has to take place within 60 days upon regulatory approval. So regulatory approval through the Public Service Commission can take 90 to 120 days. We could be looking at, for RDE, we could be looking at late second quarter, even into the early summer. Tuscany Hills is a little different matter. They aren't regulated at this time under the PSC. As long as the PSC doesn't require something because maybe they should have been, we may be able to close that one up a little bit sooner. And in that particular case, that was one that we were going to pay for with unrestricted reserves, $250,000 each out of the water and the wastewater funds. And so the bonds won't be an issue, and we could possibly turn that one around within the next couple of months. So we'll just have to wait to find out what will take place from the PSC.
And you understand my concern about that I believe that it's highly illegal for us to serve people outside the city limits of Nixa without some change to an ordinance somewhere.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure we do that. And then
Yeah,
also
we will.
the concept we discussed about allowing people to, what's the term?
We're going to allow we are working on an ordinance currently to bring to
Yes.
council that we anticipate having before you prior to closing of both of these systems that will address those issues. That will also allow residents that are outside the city that would like to sign a irrevocable consent to annex, then they would be able to pay a regular rate.
City rate.
instead of
Regular
down the
city
half.
rate,
So
yeah.
we are working on that, and that will come to
Right.
council soon.
I also like to see a plan from Drew's team on how we're going to, or maybe them in utility billing of how we're going to let these people know this. It's
Yeah.
going to be a drastic change to people that were paying $10,
Yeah,
and now they're paying $30 or $40.
yeah, they will be.
So we want to make sure that they understand
And
what
part of
this is
that
and what
will-
the benefits we believe it is, and the owners of RDE believe it is to them.
Okay.
So,
We will do that. That will also be a part of the PSC process, because the PSC will no doubt hold a 30-day comment period before they make a final decision, at least on the RDE, the one at RDE. So, and then as far as the one at Tuscany, there, again, some more explanation, not only of, I think the way we've looked at it, I believe our water rates are a little cheaper than theirs, so that would be good, although I don't think they pay a sewer bill. I think that's all rolled in their HOA, so they would be seeing a sewer bill. So that's something we'll, obviously we'll want to talk to those
we want to make
folks.
sure that we inform them of everything we know
Yeah.
about in the smoothest way possible.
Yeah, we had talked internally about not only notifying the people individual, but also potentially having, a public hearing or a public meeting for them to come and visit with us and ask questions and those types of things, get to know some of the people and get them comfortable with how we operate, so. Okay.
Any other questions? Somebody? Thank you, Doug.
You bet.
Huh? Well, I told you to ask your question first. I let you ask questions first, and then ask my questions. All right, we'll open up the public hearing if you'd like to speak to this item. And we will close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? All right. Because I was going to say postpone this, but if you have, if we got several months before we have to actually worry about it, I'll worry about it next time. 2022-026.
First reading Council Bill number 2022-026, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the mayor to execute an asset purchase agreement with Tuscany Hills Regional Sewer District Incorporated for the acquisition of certain sewer and water systems.
And same thing, rinse and repeat. We'll open up the public hearing. close the public hearing. Any questions or discussions on this portion? All right. We'll move on to second readings, 2022-012. Oh, is that right? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Second reading, Council Bill Number 2022-012, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Chapter 22, Article 4, Section 22-310 of the Nixa City Code to establish new rates for electric service.
This council bill was first read at your last meeting, and for the adoption of new electric rates along with the new energy adjustment formula. Along with a copy of the council bill in your packet, I've also included a new spreadsheet, the one that, of course, we had, that I brought to you at the last time. I had the wrong revenue in the 2021 numbers, and so I've got that corrected. At the same time, we also had, of course, the budgeted numbers for 2021. And of course, since that spreadsheet was originally built back before we had final numbers of 2021, we now have the final numbers of 2021 entered in there. Drew, would you mind scrolling up just a little ways to get to, there's a spreadsheet that is landscaped. Go to the next one more time. There you go. This is the updated spreadsheet. In the 2022 revenue, you can see the 17,250 or 17,250,000. And then, as I mentioned down below, in 2021, we actually put the actual sales of energy and then also the actual expenses. It made a considerable difference in the bottom line as far as the year-end unrestricted cash balances. Bring the right side in just a little bit, Drew. Thank you. And shows the end of 2026, now the projected ending cash balance is $7.3 million. Now, obviously, that's based on our best guess for the years through 2026, and we'll keep a very close eye on this and watch it as we go to make sure that we're maintaining that. We're still on a declining balance, which is somewhat by design. A number of years ago, we did start. We haven't had a rate increase, of course, since 2017. Part of the idea behind that was to spend down some excess reserves we had. And in the meantime, we did some things to even gather even more unrestricted reserves, so it's allowed us to keep on moving. With the sale of the transmission system, in 2018, we utilized those proceeds to pay off the remaining debt we have at around $4 million. So that was, that has made the electric department work from cash. The sale also lowered maintenance and operational costs that we spent annually for that 69 line, which was, it ranged anywhere from $75,000 to $125,000 a year. So that's gone away. The other things we've done, of course, is we've acquired new lower-cost wholesale power contracts. That actual line is split out there in the operational expenses, so you can see where we've got an estimate of what those costs will do. And again, those are based on about a 1.5% increase. A big part of that increase is more growth than it is price. There's probably, let's see, I wish I would have gotten a percentage number put together for you, but I didn't. The majority of the power that we purchase is at a fixed price right now. The fluctuating issues are potentially changes in transmission cost. And then we do have a little bit of our energy that we purchase, especially through the peaks of the winter and the peaks of the summer, where it's exposed to some market cost. Most of it is hedged at a fixed rate, but there is a little bit that's exposed to the market, which is where the energy cost adjustment comes in, which I'll explain in more detail here in a minute. We've also, of course, we got those new power contracts, and we've got a combination of natural gas, wind, direct connected solar, and then recently we've also renewed our hydropower contract. I think as a percentage, we're in the 35 to 40% range as far as renewable energy versus carbon-based energy, which is, I feel is pretty good for not having, any targets or, anything that we're required to go towards. We're in pretty good shape there. We've acquired new network transmission service prior to owning the transmission, our own transmission system. Of course, we had to pay for transmission to get it to town, and those were bundled in the other rates, which really skewed what the cost of the price per megawatt hour was. So now we've got that separated out, and that was one of those issues where there's a potential for some fluctuating costs that we need to be thinking about, and which I spend a lot of time tracking very closely. We've acquired other key elements, of course. One of the things that we did for our customers was we spent unrestricted reserves for that $2.3 million of excess costs that we had for Winter Storm Uri last February. So had we not had the reserves that we did, we could have been unfortunate with, like some of our fellow utilities that actually had to borrow money to be able to pay those bills. So, or they've turned around and passed those on to their customers at a very quick rate, which we didn't want to do, and I'm very thankful for your support that we didn't do that. At the January meeting, of course, we also discussed other necessary considerations. We discussed where this proposes a one-time lowering of rates. The idea behind that is now that we've made all of these changes with operational costs, that we could get that rate lowered a little bit, share some of those savings back with the customers, and then that would kind of reset us towards moving for the future and kind of keeping up with inflation as we move to the future. So the first year we would lower the rates, and then in the following years through 2026, we would do small incremental 1.5% increases, which on a residential bill, it amounts to a couple dollars annually. So it's very small, but it keeps us in line with where we need to go, and we'll continue to watch that. And that's what I've used in this scenario, is that 1.5% increase after 2023. The old city utilities fuel cost adjustment, we would replace with, of course, an energy cost adjustment, which I'd mentioned I'll get into in more detail in just a minute here. The other item that we are doing with this is we're aligning the retail side demand cost. We get demand cost based on the amount of instant on power that we have to have. We carry 51 megawatts of load, so we pay demand for that 51 megawatts. Commercial customers pay a little bit of demand as well, but in the past, we had those set at different prices. Actually, they shouldn't be, because the price of the demand is the same cost whether it's 1 megawatt or whether it's 50 megawatts. And so we realigned that to where they're all the same cost, and they pay it more on a pro rata share versus based on the price itself. So we've aligned that out, which is much better. And it didn't make a significant change. It didn't really make an increase for any of them. I mean, it did for a few, but because of the way the rates are going down, it's not going to turn around and increase their cost. They're still going to have a lesser bill. Of course, the other item for this is the adjustment of the security lighting. Our security lighting, we haven't been collecting what it costs to maintain those for a number of years, and so in calling around to some of our local utilities, we were half or less than what some of those were. So we did look at our numbers. We're still going to be under them by at least $1, some of them as much as $3 a month, but we'll be able to maintain our costs that way, and we'll move that to a $15 cost. The energy cost adjustment, I want to make sure I explain this a little better. I don't think I have done a very good job at this. Back in 2010, we instituted, what was happening was city utilities had a fuel cost adjustment. And at that time, they were utilizing...
Springfield City Utilities.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
They were utilizing a fuel adjustment charge based on what it was costing them to transport coal to the power plant. And those costs at that time, those transportation costs were just eating their lunch, and their cost was going really high. So they instituted a fuel cost adjustment based on energy to help cover that rising cost of the fuel for them to be able to produce the power. What happened was, we didn't have that captured in our rates, and within 2 years, we were down almost $4 million. So we quickly came in, we passed the fuel cost adjustment, but what it basically was, it was a pass-through. We took whatever city utilities charged us, and we spread that equally amongst our customers, and so that's where that's been since 2010. The last few years, however, that number actually went negative, and so we've been passing out a credit because the ordinance that we passed says that it's a straight pass-through. So because we're getting a credit, of course, we're sending out a credit as well, to the tune of $2 to $2.5 million. So it's a pretty good chunk. That will be absorbed in this rate reduction. So part of the rate reduction grabs that 12 to 14% plus a little bit more. What we're looking to do is, because we'll have set rates based on kilowatt hour plus your monthly service fee, and in the case of the commercials, the demand, we would institute an energy cost adjustment. It's specifically tied to what we actually have. So we have set what we anticipate the cost of energy per kilowatt hour for the next 5 years. We have already set what that number is. It's 5.73. Sorry, I haven't looked at this in a day or two. So that would be set at 5.73. At the end of the first year, we will go back and we will look at what the actual kilowatt that we paid. We'll take all the bills from transmission, from the hydropower, from the natural gas, from the solar, from everything, and we'll get a cost per kilowatt hour. And whatever that cost per kilowatt hour is, we will subtract that from that 5.73. So if it's off 1/100 of a cent, obviously that's where the fuel adjustment cost that's where the energy cost adjustment would come in. What would cause that to be up or down? One could be significant increases or decreases in transmission cost, or significant increases or decreases in that little bit of market-exposed fuel, which now is much less. Since the February Storm Uri, it's much less than it used to be. We were exposed in the summertime to as much as 15 megawatts, and we're not now. We're down to more like 5 megawatts, so that should be very small. But anyway, that's the way that would work. We don't have any other way to set it because the formula is adopted through the ordinance, so it's a pretty rigid, here's your starting number, here's how you figure the other numbers, and so it's very rigid. And then what we would do is we would take the whole year and spread that out to be able to collect that back. So it wouldn't be just a one-time change every month or every quarter. Staff wouldn't have we wouldn't have the authority to change that except for that once-a-year time frame, and it's based on those actual numbers. So does that make sense? Is it clearer that way? I hope so. So with that being said, staff does recommend passage of the ordinance, and we would get started with lowering customers' rates, at least for this first year.
Questions?
Question? Go ahead.
Yeah. I do have a few questions. First of all, this is definitely looks a lot better than it did the last one, so
yeah.
I'm not as concerned about it.
I feel a lot better about it too.
I did have some questions though when you talk about the retail side of the security lighting. Can
Okay.
you explain what that is? I'm not sure I understand what that is.
We rent basically like a mercury vapor light or in somebody's backyard. We don't use those lights anymore, but we do have that service where if there's a some overhead line in some of the subdivisions, and somebody wanted a light on a pole for security lighting in their backyard or something like that. We rent those out on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Is what we do. And then
Like a
we
street
maintain.
light in your backyard.
Yeah,
my mom
yeah.
has.
Okay.
It's almost like a street light,
Like a
yeah.
small
Not quite as bright,
Understand exactly what that is then.
yeah.
And then when we talk about the adjustments and the pay and stuff like that, as far as that, how would that affect like, the customers that are on like a level pay? How
Well-
are we gonna address those?
I may have to have Jennifer step in if I speak to the side a little bit, Jennifer, but that would get rolled in because they do a similar thing. What you're doing on a level pay this year, you're either gonna be plus or minus at the end of year what you actually used. And so that true up plus what your new average may be for that next year is what your next year's
Okay.
monthly
So
will
it's
be.
gonna- it's
So
gonna
that all
work-
gets,
it's gonna
that
work
will get,
basically the same.
it'll get rolled right in with it. It'll just
Okay.
be absorbed right in there.
And just to clarify, I mean, you did a really good job explaining the ECA versus the FCA.
Yeah.
The fuel costs. That's basically the same thing. We're just doing it in a different manner because it's not actually a fuel consumption or fuel cost adjustment. It's actually gonna be the
Right.
energy what it's gonna cost for the energy itself.
Right.
And so currently, if I look at my utility bill and I see a cost adjustment, that's exactly what would it be like even if we had an ECA.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
So I think the last time I asked would that require council approval? I think you said yes, but rereading it does not seem like it does.
The way the ordinance is written, it does not. I certainly have no problem with either you
think-
approving it, me bringing it to you once a year, however you'd like to do it. I have no problem with that. I mean, it's all an open public record, so you can see, here's what we had and here's what
Well, I
here's
think the
what our
concept
actual
would be
cost
like
was.
like in the case of Uri, where we had a 2 million mistake that was on our part, and council then at that point decides that they're gonna eat half of that, or. 'cause
Would
they
certainly have
they
those
should they should have that-
conversations.
should have that ability
Yeah.
to do that.
That's a good point.
So I would like to amend this. He's not gonna like that. Pretty simple, like just one sentence amendment.
We could.
He's gonna write it down for me. Get your form. Fill out a form for me. I'd like to amend section H. I would like to add a section 5 to section H, which would be at about line 462. I like the line numbers, that's nice. Line 462 of the
It's
current
nice,
document.
it's nice having those line
of the
numbers on
current
there.
document you have. The EAC will be approved annually by city council via resolution, or however you would like to word that.
Yeah, that's,
I have it written down on a piece of paper. Just that, the ECA will be approved annually by city council via resolution. So it doesn't require an ordinance, but just a resolution, like you said, telling us what you're doing and let us approve
right,
it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Hey, not just a hat rack.
And while he's writing that up, I did have one last question. At the last meeting, I did ask kind of what your thoughts were, if you had any concerns with this. And you seemed like you did have more concerns then than you do tonight. Is that kind of the feel that I'm getting as well?
That's correct. And I guess I should say because now we can see that we actually we're not gonna drain the unrestricted reserves as much as we did last year. Now, I will still say that if you look at that operations expense over revenue in every single one of those years, so there is a slow decline.
Sure.
It's no different than I said last time. We're gonna watch this very close to see, because what we've seen lately, we've seen 40% increases in a lot of our materials and some of those things. So every year, we're gonna have to watch this really close. Unfortunately, we're gonna be in front of you for a number of budget amendments for electric, just for buying wire and the things we have to do this year because we're so severely under budget, which is scary because we thought we padded it quite a bit and we're still upside down, so. But I do feel much better about it. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
anyone else have any questions or discussion?
Anything else
while
for
we're
me?
Waiting on Mr. Woodman. We can do, can I do the public hearing before the amendment? Okay, well, we'll do that. We will open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item.
I forgot to say my name the last time I came up here. My name is Ron Sanders, live at 976 Glen Oaks Drive. Thank you for making the amendment. That's what I'm here for. I would like to see it as an actual ordinance, but the proclamation is a good way to go. I didn't come in here to try to steamroll anybody. I think that you've been doing an awesome job, with dealing with energy purchases and stuff. It's amazing that we can go out there and purchase electricity and build up a reserve that I think people up in Springfield are still paying $30 extra a month or something like that because they didn't know how to handle those 6 days or whatever. So we're doing really good. But my biggest concern was, what happens when the next person sits in your seat? And maybe they're not as responsible, or maybe they're not as smart, and maybe they make a big mistake that ends up coming back and hits us square, and then we have to absorb $2 or $4 million somewhere. I would rather have it here than have it behind closed doors, and I thank you for recognizing that.
Promise Sanders. We'll leave the public hearing open. Close the public hearing. Ask Mr. Woodman if he's ready. No, he's still thinking. What you think? You ready?
So, the amendment that I've got drafted is that we would amend Council Bill 2022-012 by inserting after Section 22-310H4, a new subsection which shall read as follows. Subsection 5, the ECA shall be established by resolution of the City Council each year.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good?
Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, I'm gonna need that first again. Was that
Oh,
Justin?
Justin, sorry.
Okay.
Justin. Yeah, you're in the wrong angle, right? Justin and Aaron, yep. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. Okay. Any other questions on the amended ordinance or discussion? Okay. Take a motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
So made.
Got that one? Whenever you're ready.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
Sean Lucas.
Yes.
I want to thank you all for all the hard work you all put into getting this straightened out and made it more easy for us to understand it. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to 2022-013.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2022-013, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with the Community Foundation of the Ozarks for the administration of a grant funding program and amending the 2022 budget to appropriate funds for such contract.
Good, Mayor, Council. Again, this is coming before you. I think it's the fourth time now. We did bring it last year, but as we talked about prior, unfortunately, we just weren't able to get the agreement with the CFO completed in time by the end of the year. So we are bringing it back tonight for the second reading for a budget amendment, as well as to be able to enter into the contract with the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. As mentioned before, this would allocate $40,000 of ARPA funds. $10,000 of that would go to the Nixa Community Foundation for administrating the grant process, and the remaining $30,000 will be distributed through the grant process to other nonprofits as designated as a 501c3 according to the U.S. Treasury's interim rule. There was a question, I think, that was posed to me, whether or not houses of worship would be allowed. And the answer to that is just if they are a 501c3 designation, then yes. Otherwise, the U.S. Treasury interim rule only allows the money to go to a 501c3. So I just want to clarify that too, because that question was raised. I have visited with the Nixa Community Foundation Board again. They are prepared to move forward if council were to pass this tonight. The plan is to open the grant process tomorrow. It'll be an online process to where nonprofits can go online, fill out the grant application, and then the Nixa Community Foundation will meet, I think it's, don't hold me to this date, February 23rd, somewhere, or, March 23rd, I think it is, a month from now. I have to get my month straight here. But they're going to meet again. Yeah, I don't know. It's all ran together now. So next month, in about a month, they're going to meet. How's that? And go over those applications and determine what funds will be granted out. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question.
Sure.
If this money isn't all allocated out this year, can it carry over till next year? Does it all have to be used this year?
Once it goes to the Nixa Community Foundation, they can open another grant process if they want to tell all the money's gone. It just depends on what applicants they get, yeah.
That includes
But
all
the-
40,000?
The 10,000 stays with the Nixa Community Foundation. The other 30,000 would go to other nonprofits.
Okay.
Yep. I can tell you, though, I've already had plenty of nonprofits reach out. I don't think it's
Okay.
going to be an issue.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jimmy.
You bet.
We will open up the public hearing and close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? Motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Jared,
I don't know who that was. It's down that way.
roll call, please.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hookstraight,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orr.
Yes.
And we move on to the resolutions, 2022-021.
Resolution number 2022-021, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a non-disclosure agreement with TFB Engineering LLC.
The Missouri Joint Municipal Electric Utility Corporation, affectionately called MUJMUC. It's the electric corporation arm of MPUA, or Missouri Public Utility Alliance. They are in the process of purchasing the 69 kV assets that we sold to Grid Alliance back in 2018. There's a lot of contractual things that they're working on that is the reason they ended up with purchasing this, right of first refusals and some other things, but which is not our issue. But in the end, they're actually purchasing this, and they need certain information from us, and in the middle of that is a consultant, the TFB Engineering. And so some of the information, they're not able to get everything they need through Grid Alliance. I guess we could say it's not really an amicable sale. But anyway, so they're reaching out to us because we did keep all the information, and it's because we went through that. It's all nice and neat and, it's all compact in one area. And I've spent a lot of time working with them. Some of the information, however, is proprietary and confidential. And mostly because it's cybersecurity and physical security related. And so we need to disclose this information to this engineering firm that's working for MUJMUC to provide them the information to be able to develop new agreements, pole attachment agreements for us and those types of things. So that's what this resolution would do, would authorize the city administrator to sign a non-disclosure agreement with the TFB Engineering so we can disclose certain information to him that he in turn passes on to MUJMUC. It's kind of funny, isn't it? MUJMUC.
They're gonna get more money than we got, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, they're buying it for a lot less
Oh, good.
than we were paid for it.
Nice.
So, yeah, good for them.
That's the less than amicable part.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We like that.
That's a lot to do.
None of the information is proprietary information of our customers or
Right.
information related to
No.
our contract. Well, I guess they probably could include our contract.
Most of
with-
our stuff is an open
Grid
book
Alliance.
because of our open records. What this is more related to cybersecurity, physical security type items that we do by law have protections for. And including any customer information, which they won't need any customer information, but that all falls into the realm of that where we have authority to keep some of that stuff confidential.
Any other questions? Thank you, Doug. We'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussions on Mug? Motion to approve?
So made.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Move on to 2022-022.
Resolution number 2022-022, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Rumfelt Tree Service for vegetation management services.
Our Nixa electric utility, we've utilized tree trimming contractors for quite a number of years. And our most recent contract has expired. It expired at the end of the year, and we're in need of a new contract for some tree trimming services. Staff solicited proposals for tree trimming, line clearing from the public, and the successful bidder would be awarded a contract for a 3-year period with potential for 2 additional 1-year extensions. We received bids for an hourly cost for equipment and material, or equipment and labor is basically how those are set up. And then we utilize work orders and our own arborist or tree crew to be out with them, ahead of them, basically meeting with all of the customers ahead of time, and then assuring that they're doing what they're supposed to do and that they're cleaning up and that type of thing. We've had very good success doing it that way. I can remember a time many years ago where there were probably one of the biggest complaints I ever heard had to do with tree trimming. Knock on wood, I've heard maybe 3 in the last 5 years. So it's really worked out well for us to be able to do it in this fashion. Of course, having an arborist or somebody with that professional certification talking to the customers makes a lot of difference as well. And we've done a few other things, tree voucher programs and some of those educational type things to assist our customers with planting trees. We only received 2 proposals, one from Arkamo, which I don't remember ever hearing that name, kind of like Mudgemuck. That was kind of a funny name for me, so I think I would have remembered it. And then Rumfelt Tree Service. Rumfelt Tree Service is actually the one that the contract we had that just expired. So they did put in again. They were reviewed and ranked by staff, and of course, Rumfelt Tree Service, they did submit the best qualified proposal. And they, like I said, they've worked for us for a number of years now. Their employees are very responsible. They clean up very well. Of course, they utilize arborists as well that are also certified to trim around, energized facilities. And they work very well with our customers. I've never had a complaint from a customer saying that the contractor was rude to them or any of that. All I've ever heard is they clean up really well, they rake things, they really do a nice job. So I'm recommending to you that to pass the resolution, which would allow the city administrator to execute the contract.
Is this the company that did the tree trimming on Gregg Road? Somebody trimmed it. They
It could
did a
have
good
been,
job.
it could have been, but there's other power on Gregg Road too. There's some Ozark Electric on Gregg Road as well, and I know that Ozark Electric's currently got a contract with Mike's Tree Service
I can't remember who it was.
So it could have been-
It's past the roundabout, though, so.
to the north.
Mhm.
That's Probably Ozark, wasn't it? Yeah, that was probably Ozark, so it would have been Mike's Tree Service.
Okay, I was just curious, they
Yeah.
did a good job. They did leave a chunk of wood next to one of the stumps, which I can't figure why they didn't pick it up. But it looks good. I'm glad they did the tree trimming, because it was,
Yeah.
they were getting really tall there.
Yeah. We can't claim that one, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Doug. And we'll open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussions? Motion to approve?
So made.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And 2022-023.
Resolution number 2022-023, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a sponsorship agreement with Land of Frost.
Good evening. This is our annual Land of Frost sponsorship agreement that we've done for a lot of years with Land of Frost. They've been a great relationship that we've got with them. They provide sponsorship for 73 baseball, baseball, softball, t-ball, and soccer teams currently with us. They have added a little something that they did last year as well in free clinical time, and so provided an extra 1,000 to that particular line for us to offer free sports clinics and things as well. And so we did that with basketball and volleyball last year. We're looking to expand to basketball, volleyball, and hopefully some baseball or softball this year. And so this is just the annual agreement that the city administrator will sign to award this agreement and help us collect those funds. And then in return, we'll provide the proof of sponsorships through backs of jersey pictures, banners, and things like that on our end. Any questions?
Any questions?
Would they be interested in sponsoring a burnisher?
I wish. I wish.
The Meridian title. Burn. I like it.
It's like a Zamboni.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
And we'll open up the public hearing.
That's a good question.
Close public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? Motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And 2022-024.
Resolution number 2022-024, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa repealing resolution number 2022-017 and authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Decker and D. Good, P.C.
If you'll recall, at our last meeting, we passed a resolution to enter into the contract with Decker and D. Good, but unfortunately, they missed a section about the professional liability coverage. They only carry $2 million instead of the $5 million that was proposed in the contract. After consulting our city attorney, he said that that's a reasonable amount, so we are coming back with this to ask for an amendment to the contract, lowering that amount to $2 million.
Any questions? Thank you, Jennifer. And we'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any other questions or discussion? Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move on to 2022-026.
No.
25? Oh, did I skip one? Oh, sorry.
25.
25, yes.
Yeah.
25.
Resolution number 2022-025, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Arvest Bank for purchasing card services.
If you'll recall, way back last year, we had, we sought out bids for banking services, and we constructed the request for proposal such that we could do banking services separate from purchasing card services. And so Southern Bank was awarded the bid for banking services, and Commerce Bank was awarded the bid for purchasing card services. So that resolution was passed, and we sent the contract to Commerce Bank for them to sign, and then they came back and said, we don't want to sign your contract. So we went back to our bid scores, and Arvis Bank was the next best bid in line. So we have reached out to them. We sent them the contract and said, please review this, and they said, looks great, we'll sign it. So this resolution is so that we can enter into that contract for Arvis Bank to provide our purchasing card services.
Did Commerce just misread it and thought that if they won, they got both, and they only wanted both?
No, they understood it was purchasing card. I think maybe they didn't present the contract to their legal team ahead of time, perhaps. And so the people who worked on the bid were just working on the services and didn't really think about that aspect of it. So when it came down to signing it, they were like, we're not going to sign this. So that was my understanding. Any other insight? Yeah. Don't really know. They just said,
Okay, that's fine. We like harvest. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Jennifer. We will open up public hearing. Close public hearing. Any further questions or discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
Pick one item. Okay, sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now 2022-026.
Resolution number 2022-026, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa consenting to the mayor's appointment of Mark Hartsock to the Board of Adjustment.
Evening. The mayor has nominated Mr. Mark Hartsock to serve the remainder of the Board of Adjustment term left vacant by the late Steve Russell. This term will, and I apologize, there's an error in my memo. This term will expire on May 31st, 2023, not April 2023, as indicated in the memo. And this will give us full board membership. All 5 seats will be filled with this consent.
Any questions? No. Mark. My plan was originally to pick somebody, so you can go, was to pick somebody from the list of people that had applied to be on the Home Rule Charter Commission. Mark did apply, he is on that list too, but we needed somebody quickly because there was an issue that needed to be resolved prior to the time we were going to resolve that. So I didn't want to have a conflict on that, so I went ahead and just put him on this, and probably will ask a couple of the people from that list to be on the, what'd you call them, auxiliary members, or, yeah, the extra people that we can have in, because it's hard to get enough people on this board sometimes, because it's used so rarely. We'll open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And move on to 2022-027.
Resolution number 2022-027, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a tower attachment agreement with Christian County Emergency Services.
Christian County 911's been working for some time to improve radio communications all over the county, but more important to us, to the Nixa Police Department. They've had some real issues, and they've come to us seeking to utilize one of our towers. It's actually tower number 7, which is the one off of Cheyenne by High Point and Summit Schools, to put a small antenna, what I call a small antenna, because it's not like a big array that a cell company, or that a cell company would use. It's very similar, almost identical to the items that the ham radio group put on the tower over here on East 14. So they've come and asked for an inexpensive rental agreement to do that, which, and as with the ham radio, we put together a similar agreement. It's almost identical except for the names, where they would pay $1 a month versus what our typical charges are for like the cell companies, because we receive such a strong benefit from it in this particular case, or the Nixa Police Department should enhance their communications quite a bit, which they desperately need. So anyway, what we have in front of you is a resolution which would authorize the city administrator to sign this agreement, providing them that availability for $1 a month. We've already looked at their equipment. We predetermined that we don't have any issues. We don't need to have a structural engineer and those types of things. So once we get this in place, we're ready for them to come and install what they need to do. So staff's recommendation is to approve this resolution. We can move forward.
Any questions? Sounds good to me. Thank you, Doug. And we'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, one more. 2022-028.
Resolution number 2022-028, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to apply for and accept grant funding provided by the Missouri Department of Transportation for certain traffic safety programs.
Mayor, Council, on an annual basis, we apply for a multitude of grants that are non-matching from the Missouri Department of Transportation and their efforts to enhance safety on the roadways. These particular grants are a primary funding source for our overtime and proactive enforcement in the areas of DWI and hazardous moving violations. And additionally, they also give us smaller amounts of money for what we commonly refer to as mini grants. And you can see that we listed a variety of those. Sometimes they come up with even more of those, so it would be all of those and then any other ones that they could come up with. So they like to have catchy names for them, like, you know, drive sober, get pulled over, those kinds of things. So it's not an all-inclusive list, but we would ask that we would have the privilege and authorization to apply for all of these grants. And of course, they are non-matching.
Any questions? Thank you, Chief. And we'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. All right, move on to our new business. We haven't had new business in a long time, doesn't seem like. We used to have resolutions we used to have ordinances all the time. I love new business.
I'm gonna wear out the carpet. In early 2018, my staff, some from wastewater, and I think a couple others, at the time, I think even Mr. Bingle sat in on this for a few things. Early on, we worked with our consultant Schaefer and Hines to develop a master plan, a very high-level master plan to serve sewer on the western and southern parts of the community. Similar to what we did a number of years ago, which ultimately led to the construction of the Northeast Regional Lift Station and the Northwest Regional Lift Station. The idea here was to figure out for future growth someday, because that was going to be a growth area in the future, where we could put a regional lift station to open up large tracts of property. That plan identified 3 major areas, and of course where there would be regional lift stations, and it also outlaid where there would be still need to be a few smaller development level lift stations to feed to those. One of the things that we of course talked about in the budget and capital improvement was to utilize some of the ARP funds to go ahead and move forward, design and construct the Southwest Regional Lift Station, which would basically replace the currently I don't want to say it's full because it's, because it pumps, yeah. Anyway, capacity full Oakmont lift station. So we would move downstream, build a larger lift station, and then some other area, smaller development lift stations could feed to that, and it would open up hundreds of acres of property over in that part of the community for future development. So we had put that together. We put $260,000 as an expenditure. I think on the revenue side, it was less than that. In talking to Jennifer, it was more in the 2.3 range that we actually were anticipating. Since that time, however, Councilman Giddens had asked us to instead look at just doing maybe the design right now. And the mayor added to that, well, maybe we could design a couple of them and we could look at how we would fund them later. So that's my reason for being in front of you this evening, is to receive direction on, which way you want us to go. To do design for complete shovel-ready projects, to do both of those projects would be in the range of $470,000. Obviously, the money's already appropriated in the budget, but we would look to you for the authorization to change the scope of what that money's been authorized for. And then if we were to design those, then we would come back to you later on and discuss how we would fund those, whether they would be a bond or we would use, some unrestricted reserves or something like that. We would hope to get this done, hope to get both of them done in time for CIPs later this year. I know it's going to be tight, but we could certainly have it by the end of the year. So anyway, that's why I'm here this evening, is to bring that up for council. Be here to answer any questions you may have and receive any different direction that you may have for us.
So can you bring up the map with the color-coded thingy?
There you go.
So you may have to zoom it out a
You may
little
have,
bit.
yeah, you may have to zoom out a little bit.
So which of these blocks would be, so the green block is already served?
All right.
The blue blocks are partially served? Is that the way I'm understanding?
No, sir. The colors represent the drainage basins. Okay? The green one is where the Oakmont lift station is now. As you can see, yeah, right. Where we would build the Southwest Regional is on to the left and towards the bottom a little ways. Still in the green, move up, just right there. That's the general area where the newer regional would be. And then as you can see from the north, there are these other dots. Those are the smaller area, development-driven, smaller lift stations. They would eventually feed into that. One of the big things about the Oakmont lift station, one, the wet well and pumping system is at capacity, but so is the downstream force main that runs back to the north and through part of that, ultimately getting over to the treatment plant. And so to create a regional lift station out of it, it's not only building the lift station, but it's replacing a bunch of that force main with larger pipe. So it's a pretty considerable project. The Kelby Creek lift station is the red area to the bottom right. That's correct, right there. It would remain in that same location. The biggest restraint to this one is the elevation, the head pressure that's there, and then also downstream piping is also too small. And so because that was the case back when Kelby Creek was developed, they only build it large enough to encompass that 181 acres that's developed out there now. So we would actually expand it to be able to take more, and ultimately the pink area just to the left of the blue, that would ultimately feed over to that direction as well, to get all of that over the hill, because the treatment plant is to the north and kind of off to the treatment plant's kind of, over in that area.
So if we do those two, which areas of the highlighted areas are then not served after that point?
Well, you still would need to build a regional lift station and the smaller one on that pink area. I'm going to call it pink right there. Now, scroll the page down, please. No, I'm sorry, the other way. So let's see the top. There you go. Now, the area in blue, the red to the left of that, and the violet that's right there, those, with those smaller little lift stations, will feed into the Oakmont. Those are considerably small. Those would be ones like we would see in the Bluebird subdivision or something like that. Considerably smaller, they feed to a larger system. The red area to the north, that actually would flow to the Northwest Regional Lift Station. And that is a modification of the one that's out there at Inman School, being able to utilize that. It flows east and north to the northeast region, or the Northwest Regional. So, and we took that one on in the master plan just to see how much area it encompassed to be able to go to that lift station. So it is still kind of on the west side of town, but because we didn't have any high-level view of what that looked like, we just incorporated it when we did this study, so.
So if both of these were done, what portion of kind of the commercial area on 14 wouldn't be served? Or would all of it that's currently within the city limits be served?
Well, it could be served. However, if you're right on 14, it could possibly require a smaller lift station to go with it. So, for instance, in that violet area there, you see that one would most likely be the one that would take place, east of Nicholas on the north and some of the south along Nicholas Road. The one all the way to the left side is another smaller one that would collect all of that area, but it ultimately would pump over and down to that drainage area. So what we're talking about here is the regional lift station ultimately has the capacity to serve all of those areas, but you still may need to have a smaller lift station to get it there to start with.
So right now, if I'm north of 14 and Nicholas, we don't have capacity there.
Right.
But if we add this, then I could build a small lift station to tie into the master.
To do your development,
regional
yeah.
lift
If you had a 40-acre development there.
I wouldn't have to
it's-
build a huge thing, I could build something small.
Right, that's correct. You wouldn't have to build a huge one with you'd have an extremely long and large force main going downstream of that.
Yeah.
So,
And this plan does not take Oakmont Heights offline either. It's actually utilizing that.
well, it would, upon commissioning of the Southwest Regional, yes, sir, it would take Oakmont offline. It would gravity feed to the new one.
All right.
Everything going to Oakmont now would just go right on down the hill to this new one because it's downstream. So yes, it would ultimately take it offline.
And also, Mayor, Council, just for some clarification on the funds. I know originally we had, 2.6 million, I think it was, you said, Doug, allocated for the Oakmont lift station. There has been some changes that were made to the ARPA funds. The U.S. Treasury has came back and made some modifications that could allow us to use those funds for other projects. So that's why we kind of stepped back for a minute instead of moving forward with spending all of those ARPA funds on one project. So we're kind of stepping back, going to reevaluate and visit with council about how council wants to spend those funds moving forward. But for the sake of time, because I know that there are a lot of different developers looking at that area of town, Mr. Giddens, again, asked us if we could continue at least the planning phase of the Oakmont lift station so that we can at least keep things moving forward and those developers at least know that we are working toward a solution. So I just wanted to make sure you understand, there is some changes to the ARPA funds, so that's kind of what put the brakes on, so to speak, for just a little bit.
And I was kind of pushing Mr. Lyles because it's going to take months to design something, and so
Yeah.
we're thinking we're going to be in a time crunch here, so.
That was my thinking, was to go ahead and just design both of them.
Yep.
We have unrestricted reserves we could look at. We have currently not using any bonding capacity. I guess maybe the wastewater is the only one that still has
It has some.
any debt left. So you could bond those out similar to the way they were originally, and open these areas up. And then there's probably also the opportunity for additional infrastructure funds from the bazillions of dollars of federal infrastructure money that's coming down. but it's always better to have a project designed and ready when that money comes,
Yes.
and they're more apt
Definitely.
to let you do something like that.
Having a shovel-ready project is going to be very important when that happens.
So I think in this case, we could, it's not like, sometimes in the past, we had gotten some stuff designed that we had no concept that we could ever pay for, but these even if we don't get any money from anywhere else, we could fund these ourselves if needed. And so having both of them ready would just leave us a lot of options.
And then
That's
again,
my
we're looking for a little bit of direction from council tonight on if you want us to proceed with both designs, as Mr.
That's
Colvin
correct.
stated, and also if we want to utilize ARPA funds for the 470,000, or we wanted to utilize some other revenue source.
So my suggestion would be to do them both and to utilize utility funds to do, current utility reserves to do that.
So to give you guys an idea of the reason that I came to Mr. Lyles with this is there are businesses that want to come into that area that they can't put in one toilet. So we can't support it right now. And obviously, commercial growth is needed anywhere. So that's kind of what started this whole conversation. And I feel like this is something that needs to happen. At least now, it's not a no to someone. It's a, we're working on it. And having a plan, I think, will help us gain some of those commercial people, which would be very nice.
And then also I want to provide Mr. Colvin the opportunity to speak if there's any concerns with utilizing utility funds or reserves, or would you?
Well, I think the reserves are available without having them right in front of me. I'll let Ms. Evans speak at that. I know we are going to use, $250,000 for the Tuscany purchase, but we've certainly got more than that in unrestricted reserves, so.
If you'll recall in the budget process, this project was appropriated to spend 2.6 million, but the appropriation of the ARPA funds was less than that, 2.342. So we had already planned to spend $257,233 of wastewater money already. So we're just looking at an additional
Additional couple hundred
220,000.
Yeah,
We've got plenty
we've
in
got
the
that.
unrestricted savings account, and there's plenty of money for that, I think.
So you can give us all
Yeah,
the
we're good.
specifics on it too when it comes back as an ordinance or whatever, or whatever the next thing is.
Well, at this point, I'm not sure what we're going to bring back to you.
You had to bring us a budget, you had to bring us a budget amendment at some point to pay for it all, so.
To actually construct, yeah. Because where we're sitting today, the appropriations are there. It's just a matter of, do you want to use those appropriations?
I don't think there's
to do
enough
two
to do both.
design
There's not
projects?
enough to do both,
Well,
right?
just
Well, there is for the
design.
design.
Okay,
For the design,
for both or just for one? 'Cause
yeah.
we were only gonna do
To
one.
design both, we're estimating at 470. It's probably going to come in less than that. We're being careful. So it would be around the 470 mark, and like she said, we've got 2.3. Of course, that's revenue.
It's
That's
ARPA
hasn't
money,
been
it's
put
ARPA
in
money
there.
scheduled, so
That
that's
hasn't
from a
been put
different
in there.
fund.
So yes,
Right.
we would need to do something.
Figure out something.
Ultimately. And we could even incorporate that when we come back on the budget amendment on the Tuscany thing in the next month or two to get it finished up,
Sounds good.
if you'd like.
Everyone agrees? Everyone says, okay?
Yep.
Okay, for sure. That's what we'll do. All right. Anything else from staff? No? Big pig? Big pig, was it? Looked like a big pig in the pictures.
Had a
Oh,
good
Jimmy
finish.
missed.
Jimmy missed one. That's
Well, I
I'm pretty
didn't
sure
miss,
Joe
but I
did
didn't
too.
fall. I'm not going to throw Chief under the bus.
Anything else from council?
Oh, I just wanted to mention that tomorrow, myself and Tori Pegram from the library and Katie Buford at the Parks Department will, on behalf of Nixa City Council, or I'm sorry, Nixa Arts Council, be acquiring our sculptures through that Sculpture on the Move program. It's a Zoom meeting, and it's kind of a lottery thing where they draw a city, and that city gets to pick. So we have a ranked list of 21 sculptures, which should be plenty to get the 3 that we're going to get. So by the next meeting, I'll have an update on the actual sculptures that we are acquiring, and then we can start talking, about where to put them and how to make all that happen. So it's very
cool.
exciting.
Very cool. Anybody else?
I'm going to the MML Legislative Conference tomorrow in Jeff City. So I emailed a lot of staff asking for any legislation or anything that is in Jeff City right now that they'd like clarification on. I can ask our representatives while I'm up there and council. If you have anything currently pending, just send me an email before tomorrow or sometime before like 2:30, and I'll be sure to bring it up.
Cool.
The next Chamber Gala is Friday night for all of you that have tickets for attendance to that. Should be a great event. Mr. Russell calls me every day, tells me something new that's going to happen at the gala, and so.
Wrestling.
It'll be wrestling, yeah. Mud wrestling, yeah. All right.
I move that city council go into closed session under section 610-021-1, 3, and 13 of RSMO so that council may discuss legal actions, causes of action, and confidential and privileged communications with their attorney, and the hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of an employee, and any individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to the employee. I also move that this closed session, records related thereto, and any votes taken by council during this session shall be closed under section 610-021 RSMO, and that city council shall stand adjourned after the closed session.
Second.
Sean did.
Quiet.
Aaron,
Roll call, please.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham, Amy Hookstraight,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Jared Giddens.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.